All right, welcome to the Let It Fly show. We have a unique location and a very unique guest. We'll tell you about that. But to remind you, always brought to you by Omaha Steaks, a great gift to give. And since 1917, supplying wonderful food to restaurants all over the area, including very soon, Memorial Day, the Let It Fly Sports Bar. You'll be able to get some of that as well. I am Michael Severe. He is Josh Jones, of course, former Creighton Blue Jay and Central Eagle.
Thank you, brother.
Don't want to forget about that at all. We have a very special guest.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking with Coach Tom Osborne. Have you chatted with Coach much?
Probably like 3 times.
Okay.
Always been in passing at banquets.
Yeah.
Obviously, just the legend behind who he is always utmost respect. But this is the first time up close and personal.
Yeah, and of course we'll talk a lot about teammates because he's a co-founder of it along with his wife Nancy.
Yep.
You were a teammate kid?
I was a teammate mentee for a day.
Oh, okay.
So Creighton essentially, we had a Creighton Teammates Day.
Yeah.
And I want to say Boone Creek, Nebraska.
Oh, really?
They drove up 2009, and we had a hard practice. I don't know what it was, but we always practice hard on the Teammates Day.
Right.
Hard practice. The kids came. We had pizza. We did a little dunk contest.
Oh, nice.
And then after that, we played the game the next night.
Oh,
it was tight. I liked it. And from there, to be honest with you, I'm not going to say teammates kind of like inspired me, but it was a one piece of aspiration to, allow me to give back to my own community in the ways that I do today.
Yeah, it's a really cool program, and a lot of people know a lot about it. It's even bigger now because it's spread across the state. There's so many kids that are involved with it, so many adults involved with it. And just earlier this week, you had the Governor Pillen, talking about how this was going to be mentoring month here in Nebraska and $5 million every year going towards mentoring. And this is something they had to put on the back burner because of COVID, but they're also going to encourage government employees to be mentors as well. Yeah. So you'll have that group you'll be getting into as well. So, we'll talk more about it, of course, with Coach.
Yep.
When he comes in, he'll come in about 8 or 9 minutes. But I want to look back on a couple games. Now, when this airs, it'll be after the most current game for Creighton and Nebraska. But I want to go back to a nice day for both teams.
Yeah.
Nebraska needed a win over Penn State badly. Yeah. They needed Keisei Tominaga to go crazy, which he did. And so I have this question for you as a guy who played at this level, right? How does a team like Penn State allow that many backdoor cuts?
I know.
I thought we were watching Pete Carell in Princeton, man.
I mean, honestly, sometimes it just comes to dead legs. I mean,
you think so?
Yeah. I mean, the backdoor cuts I seen Tominga do a backdoor cut from the corner. Yeah. I just seen one of the players just ball watching and sitting in dead legs. Yeah. And I'm not knocking Tominga like he can't.
Oh, yeah.
Like he didn't do nothing great because with him it's like that 30 for 30. What if I told you?
What if I told you?
30 for 30.
Yeah. And he did it in 31 minutes,
which is crazy.
Every time he was on the floor.
Yeah.
And he was 5 of 10 from 3, which is always good for him. But that many layups. And it looked like Penn State was being so aggressive on defense, stretching their defense out, letting all that backdoor cut happen. Yeah. It was a good – Nebraska needed it.
But also they it's a 4-game losing streak for Nebraska. Yep. That's huge. But for Penn State it's terrible because
they need that.
When it comes to it's almost tournament time.
Yeah, they were on the bubble.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, what is that going to do in Wisconsin with Chucky Hepburn? Yeah, that's going to be tough.
Well, they're coming to town, and that's going to be a big one for Nebraska. They played Michigan by the time you hear this, but anytime. Chucky, I'm guaranteeing you, anytime Chucky's got an opportunity to go against Nebraska, I'm guessing
for sure.
he's going to play his best basketball.
100%.
You know what I mean. There's a bunch of you guys like that got away, maybe didn't go to Nebraska, got out of state, or just went to Creighton. They're like, hey, this is I'm going to put my name on this game.
I'm home.
I'll put my name on this game.
No, exactly.
But good for Nebraska to get to 11 wins at that point. I don't know how many more wins are on the schedule. Yeah. But if they could somehow – get to 14, 15 wins. I mean, it would be interesting. Would they be close enough to maybe win one game in the Big Ten tournament and get to the NIT?
I thought about that.
I mean, it's a possibility. Yeah. CBI, of course, is there as well and that kind of stuff. So I'm not sure. But at the same day, Creighton has a wonderful performance against a really good, I think, going to be a really good Villanova team.
Oh, yeah,
not
for sure.
Healthy.
Yeah, no, I think the Villanova team that they beat is going to make a run in the tournament.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, before the NCAA, the Big East tournament, I mean, that team matches up with Creighton so well. Creighton, the more that I have watched them, each and every game that I learned that Ryan Kalkbrenner,
Yeah.
he's the difference of every game that they play.
Yeah, he's the hub. He holds the whole
100%. And if you think about that game, I mean, watching the stats, like the stats were pretty even.
Yep.
I mean, free throw shooting 80 to 82%, 3-point percentage was both down for both teams, but that game for Creighton came down to executing when it counted. You know, they were up 10 or something like that?
Up 10 with 14-27 in the second half.
Yeah.
And that's when Villanova went on an 8-0 run to pull within 2. And from there on, it was just back and forth.
Them free throws.
Yeah.
You know, and then the
clutch.
Big, well, hey, I'll tell you, in the timeout, Villanova drew up a play, and they came out and ran a 3 for their 5-man.
Yeah.
You know, that just shows how much confidence that they have in their 5. So I'm saying that to say that for Villanova, they probably are looking back at film in a sense of like, hey, we can get better in these areas, but I don't think they're really tripping off that loss as bad.
Yeah.
But huge for Creighton.
I know this. The Big East tournament's going to be wild.
Oh, man.
Because, I mean, even, UConn we've talked about before. And
Yep.
we talked about Marquette. And, of course, Villanova and Creighton's playing well. But, I mean, I think there's probably 6 teams that could win that tournament.
Literally.
Just get hot.
Literally.
Yeah. It's going to be fun to watch. And it's always fun in New York, because it's such a great atmosphere,
Right.
Being there. So Creighton now 16th in the NET rankings. But at this point, when we're talking now,
Right.
Which is great from where they were. Anytime you can go on a 6-game losing streak and look up 4 weeks
and
later.
then win 6 in a row.
And win 6 in a row.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a heck of a move by them. And you look at the teams they have. So they have a Georgetown one, which that happened by the time you talk. But then you look at what they're going to do in terms of going forward.
Yeah.
If Kalkbrenner stays healthy, if Nembhard continues to play the way he's playing, and Alexander continues to finish around the rim the way he's finishing. He's a tough kid, man.
I mean, he's one of those guys where I feel like we didn't give him the solidified credit that I feel like we should have in the beginning when we talked to him.
Right.
I think we held him accountable when we talked to him in Vegas, rightfully so. But he has been the most consistent when it comes to knowing what you're going to get from him every single game.
I think he has reached kind of where he was last year a little bit in confidence. Because you talked a lot about how he was playing and maybe his confidence was a little lost when we were in Vegas. He's just confident now.
Yeah.
Because when you're willing to go in and take that kind of a shot like he took for some of those, I mean, it was huge watching him make those baskets and get stuff done. Of course, we are joined by, as I mentioned, a very special guest, a man who does not need an introduction, but I always give it anyway, former Nebraska football coach, U.S. Congressman, of course, AD at Nebraska, and the co-founder of Teammates as well, along with his wife, Nancy. Tom Osborne joining us here on Let It Fly Show. Coach, how you doing?
Well, still vertical.
That's good.
That's half the battle.
Start off as we always do with Teammates. How are things going right now? How was the gala? How are you guys doing? How is the organization doing?
Well, we're doing well. Obviously, the COVID deal is tough, and for 2 reasons. Number one, a lot of schools are shut down, and then sometimes some of our older mentors were real anxious to go in the schools.
Sure.
And so we had about 1,000 mentors trained and ready to be matched. And because the schools are closed, we couldn't match them. So some of those folks have stayed with us. Some have fallen away. But we're doing well. We're at about 10,000 matches. We're in about 191 school districts. We're in 5 states. So it's going well.
Wow, that's amazing. And I went to Creighton myself. I was telling Michael before you came on that we had our own Creighton Teammates Day. And we had what did I say, Boone Creek?
Boone Creek, you said. I don't know where that is.
Yeah. Drove up to Omaha, and after a basketball practice, we participated with the youth. It was great, and then they had a game after. Just saying that small piece and hearing what you're saying, when you started the Teammates program with your wife, did you guys imagine it being as vast as it is now and as many? It's got to be at least 8,000, 10,000 kids, probably plus that are impacted. Did you imagine it being what it is today?
Well, no, it's like a lot of things. Most businesses, I don't think, that have progressed to being pretty large, anyone when they started would think that it would. And the reason for our starting Teammates was I've had 36 years of coaching. I was really impacted by the changes that I saw over those 36 years. Because when I first started coaching, very seldom went out to recruit a young man, wasn't living under the same roof with both biological parents. And so the family structure changed rather dramatically. And we saw the advent of the drug culture, late 60s, early 70s. And I'd say today very few kids get through middle school without at least having the opportunity to participate in something that's illegal. And then, of course, messages, some of the music lyrics, some of the stuff on TV, some of the stuff on the internet, and then social media.
Yeah.
There's a lot of messages that would not have been allowed on the airwaves 20 years ago. So it's a confusing time, difficult time.
Yeah.
For young people. So anyway, back in 1991, Nancy asked me if there's something we could do. I said, well, I'll get up in front of our team, see what they say. And so I proposed to our players, I said, if you guys would be interested in mentoring 7th or 8th grade boy in Lincoln Public Schools, we'll see what they say and see if we could match you up. So 22 hands went up, and guys like Will Shields were among those. And so start out, we just said, well, be in the schools, just see them once a week. And then it grew into Lincoln as a community, then across the state. And but of those 22 early matches, we're somewhat gratified because of the 22 young men, 21 graduated on time. Mm-hmm. And one was riding dirt bikes around the country, and he graduated a year late. So they all graduated. Yeah. And the thing that really surprised us was of the 22, 18 went on to college. And we thought maybe 4 or 5 from that group would go on to college. So anyway, we were pleased. And so having that kind of result and that kind of interest on the part of our players, we began to expand the program.
Big news this week with Governor Pillen, $5 million each year towards mentorship. This is natural. This is going to be Mentorship Month here in Nebraska. What did that mean to you, the things he had to say in this offer?
Well, Jim has been very interested in young people. Mm-hmm. And so that was an initiative that he came forward with. Now, what the response of the legislature will be is anybody's guess, because you can have a proclamation, but if they don't vote for it. But there were an awful lot of state senators in the room, and I have a feeling that this is something that will go through pretty well. The thing that a lot of people don't realize is that the average high school dropout will cost society about $300,000 in the course of their lifetime. That'd be unemployment, aided dependent children, food stamps, sometimes substance abuse, sometimes imprisonment, and so we graduated last year. 98% of our seniors. There was about 800 of them, and I think it was much higher than the state or the national average. So we probably had maybe 100 kids that graduated that would not have, and if you multiply 100 by 300,000, that's 30 million. So it's very cost effective. And to date, we've mentored over 45,000 kids without any incident that was negative where a mentee got hurt or was somehow misled. Mm-hmm. So I feel pretty good about the results. And
that's amazing.
So it's growing. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I said 8,000 to 10,000 just thinking about Nebraska. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of lives being changed, and amazing. Right. How many do you have any, like, out of that vast of number of lives being changed, any key stories that you can kind of tell us about, success stories, or anybody that came through the the Teammates program? Mm-hmm.
Well, I've mentored 6 kids, one of them for 12 years, and just talked to him this morning.
Oh, wow.
He went Southeast Community College, and he is doing well. He's in business, works at a good job, and 2 others I mentored for 8 years, still mentoring one post-secondary. And one thing that we found was that if somebody goes on to college and they have a mentor, particularly if they're first generation, the persistence rate is only 65%. Go from year 1 to year 2. If you provide a post-secondary mentor, somebody's been there, done that, the persistence rate's over 90%. So it makes a huge difference. So we do some post-secondary mentoring. Most of our mentoring is grade 3 through 12. And just to give you one quick story, there's a young guy I was mentoring, a pretty bright guy, doing well. And then I happened to notice one day he was not doing well in math. And I talked to him about it, and he said, well, it was geometry. He said he hated geometry.
So did I.
I don't blame him.
He didn't understand it. And so he just quit going.
Oh.
And so we had a little talk, and I said, if you don't pass geometry, you don't graduate.
Yeah.
And it might be a good idea at least go to class. So,
Yeah.
So he went to class, graduated, and he's graduating from Southeast Community College. He'll be going to university next year.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
He'll live a good life. But there's a lot of stories like that where just a simple question or a gesture or
Yeah, no, you're
probably
right.
more importantly, just being there. And,
100%.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Coach Rule talked about how important it was for him to have a conversation with you. You guys had a chance to talk some football. What's been your first impression of the new Nebraska football head coach?
Well, I really like their work ethic.
Yeah.
I thought for the amount of time they had, and I haven't evaluated those players, but it seemed to me that they did about as well as they could with only about a month to put that class together. And I really like the fact that they're emphasizing state of Nebraska and that they're in the schools, because if you only come to a school when that coach has a great player,
Oh, yeah.
and he hasn't seen you for 10 years, it isn't that they're going to slam the door in your face.
Yeah, for sure.
But it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
And so if you have a relationship with the coaches, you usually find out which ones will level with you, because some guys will have 2 or 3 players that they think are
Right.
big-time players every year.
Yeah.
They probably don't.
Yeah.
And then some will say, well, this guy's kind of under the radar, but I really think he could play for you. And so I think that's been good. And like Matt, like his work ethic. And so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. For me, just to be blunt about it, talking to Coach Rule, I mean, it's great that we can have this conversation before the season starts. You've talked to several head coaches. Nebraska has essentially been struggling for, so to speak, since maybe 2015. I would believe maybe a decade or two. What do you think has been the issue with the program? And also, as a retired coach, have you had any type of urge to want to, put your input on it more than less, or just let it be what it is?
Well, I learned a long time ago that nobody wants to be micromanaged, particularly by somebody that's a has-been. And but I have talked to all of them, and I try to get the idea across that over a period of 42 years, this wasn't just short time. Nebraska won more games than any other team.
Yeah.
From 1962 to Frank Solich's leaving in 2003. I think we won 82% of our games, and Ohio State was next with 75%.
Yep.
60, 70 more wins. And so I try to point out the things that seem to make a difference over that period of time. And one of them was certainly making sure that everybody out for football was engaged. So you can have one offensive station, one defensive station, but if you have 4 stations, 2 offense, 2 defense, then everybody's getting snaps.
Makes sense.
And your second unit is getting 90 snaps. Your first unit's getting 90 snaps. And so when there's an injury or somebody isn't performing well, you've got somebody there that's ready.
Yeah, because he's the repetition. Yeah, exactly.
And but coaches are creatures of
so nobody listen. Well, nobody listen.
It's not easy though, right? To have it running fluidly like you guys did with 4 stations.
Yeah.
Is it hard to do? Let me ask you this, because we talk so much about the walk-on program here, and it is important. Mm-hmm. With the new portal system the way it is, and you have guys coming in with more experience, I think that hurts the walk-on system a bit, because those guys who waited their 2, 3, 4 years just practicing and having a chance, maybe their redshirt junior year or redshirt senior year playing, maybe now get pushed out a little bit because of the portals. How do you think that affects the walk-on system?
Right, yeah. Well, it could be. But I think if you have 150 players out there, it's good to have all 150 of them practicing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because if you're standing and watching, I know how you are when you're 18, 19.
Yeah.
You may be watching, but your mind may be 100 miles away.
Yeah, you think about after practice.
Yeah. And
that goes for basketball too, Coach, just to let you know.
Yeah. So anyway, but there's lots of ways to win.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say that the reason we haven't had more winning seasons is because of that one factor.
For sure.
So, and I go down and watch practice, and I think every one of those coaches had quite a bit to offer.
Yeah.
But, and I think going in the Big Ten, different style of football.
It is. Yeah. It is.
And so you're not going to get many possessions. And so sometimes coaches rely on so-called chunk plays. They get 40, 50 yards here, 40, 50 yards there. You don't get that many in the Big Ten. So you have to be able to put together 15, 16, 17 play drives and hang on to the ball. Otherwise, the time of possessions got to be 75, 25.
Man, talking to you is amazing because from a viewership perspective, sometimes – even myself, sometimes I can say, oh, man, this is boring, or you're not really understanding what's going on with the schemes and things, and you're breaking it down to me about it matters about style of play, but also the type of conference that you're in. Mm-hmm. And that's just amazing to me.
Right.
Wow, that's amazing.
So I would have told you that Scott Frost was going to be successful here based off him understanding the state, understanding the program, those 42 years you were talking about. It didn't work out. Why do you think it didn't work out?
Well, there were a lot of factors. Number one, he probably didn't inherit a full cupboard of players, and then came COVID.
Yeah.
And maybe a little bit of bad fortune in that there were an awful lot of close games that they just didn't win. And that's kind of the nature of football. Sometimes you play well, but you still don't win because of one thing or another. And nobody wanted Scott to be successful more than me. And so success is measured a lot of ways, but unfortunately or fortunately, the measuring stick is wins and losses.
Yeah.
And Grantland Rice said one time, for when the one great scorer comes to write against your name, it matters not that you won or lost, but how you played the game.
Not when it comes to working.
But if you sit down and talk to the average fan, they're not going to buy that. And but I remember, we lost to Florida State back in '93,
right.
And we played really well. And they're 17-point favorites, and we had a punt return for a touchdown called back, and a couple other things, and we just didn't win. Mm-hmm. But I was really proud of that team because we played at the top level. And we played well enough to be national champions, but we weren't. And so those things happen. But anyway, I like what I see of Matt, and I certainly wish him the very best. But I'm not going to be hanging around and saying,
no micromanaging from you.
Hey, Matt. Hey, Matt, you got to play this guy. that didn't work.
Yeah, right.
93 happened the way it did, but that led to unfinished business those guys concentrating during the off season, working even harder in the off season. Maybe without 93, you don't win 94, 95.
That could be true.
That led into that a little bit.
Yeah, they. I remember they had, I don't know who it was, Boyd or somebody. Boyd Epley put minute 16 on the scoreboard. It was there all summer when they were working out, and so they had that up in front of them, and they realized they came within a minute 16 of winning the national championship, and so there wasn't any real mystique about what you had to do to win a national championship, and the work ethic was really good. But I think the thing that happened over that period of time was a level of confidence, and the team chemistry really got to be exceptional. And an example of that was the end of the 1996 season. I have Grant Wistrom and Jason Peter come in to see me, and I knew they were projected to be first-round picks. And that was the end of their junior year. And I thought, well, I'm going to hear the speech. I got to do what's best for me and my family. And they said, we went 11-2. I said, yeah. He said, well, we didn't think that was good enough. I said, well, I could have been better. And they said, we're coming back. And they did, and they were great leaders. And without them, I don't think we would have been undefeated in 97. And so I never had a player when I was coaching who left early for NFL. And it really became heavily about the team.
Wow.
And not so much about the individual.
Yeah.
And that's hard to come by, And I can't say I created that. There were a lot of things that conspired to make that work. But it was a very interesting time.
Wow. I talked to Jack Stark when I played at Creighton. He was on our team too. And he used to always tell us stories about your teams and things like that, and talked about the Unity Council. He said something about there was two players by two players or something like that. I don't know the concept of how it worked, but every player was responsible for another player. Can you kind of talk about how that plan affected the years from the early 90s all the way up until 97?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because in 1992, we went 9-3. We lost a game to Oklahoma where Mickey Joseph got run into a steel bench and was hurt badly, and lost that game. Then we played Georgia Tech. They were undefeated, and we didn't have Mickey, and we got beat, and we went 9-3. But we were really disappointed, and we said, "Hey, we're gonna do a reset. Everything's on the table." And so we looked at everything: nutrition, academics. We looked at players. So Jack came up with the idea of the Unity Council, and what that was there were two players selected from each position: two offensive linemen, two defensive linemen, two running backs, two defensive backs, and they weren't chosen by the coaches; they were chosen by the players. And they met every Tuesday night, and their charge was to bring up anything that they felt was getting in the way of team unity.
To each other?
Yeah, and but Boyd Epley would be in the room. And I think Jack would be there, and so they'd come to me on Wednesday morning and say, "Well, players didn't like what they had for lunch on Friday. They didn't like the movie they saw before he played Missouri." And so I'd get up in front of them and I'd say, "Okay, I'll go talk to the cook. We won't have hot dogs on Friday. We'll let you guys pick the movie." But this idea of switching from Adidas to Nike, there's this thing called a contract, and we can't do that.
Can't break that,
They try to swap to Nike.
Yeah. So sometimes they push the envelope, but I think the interesting thing was it gave them a voice.
Yeah,
and it wasn't just a suggestion box where.
Yeah.
But I would never hear those things. They would never come to my office and say, "I didn't like what we had for lunch on Friday." And and they developed a discipline code. And so that was the deal when when Lawrence Phillips came up. He was actually charged with 2 misdemeanors. Mm-hmm. There was no felony, and so we disciplined him as we would have a 14 player in terms of the discipline code.
Right.
He was suspended for 6 games, didn't start 2 others, but that wasn't what the storyline was. And but our team, the more they beat on our head nationally, the tighter that team got, because they realized that they were being disciplined the way they had decided they would be. And so I think the good thing is we gave them some ownership, and they took it and ran with it.
Yeah, no, that's big.
Coach, you were right there at the beginning of the college football playoff in terms of 4 teams. Now they're talking about 12 and that structure. What's your feel about adding into the college football playoff, expanding to 12 if that's where they go?
Mm-hmm. Well, I can understand why people are pushing for it, because right now the standard is, well, did you make the playoff?
Yeah.
And so when you only have 4 teams, that means you got 4 winners and a whole lot of teams that aren't that successful. And but on the other hand, I think you have to look at the players. And right now, play 15 games, and you go to school, and you have spring football, and or whatever you do in the summer. And so I remember that Oregon played, I think it was Ohio State, and they had lost 3 starters, Oregon had. Mm-hmm. And Ohio State just beat them pretty soundly. And I think if you have to go another 2 or 3 games, you don't have the waiver wire. You
that makes sense.
Right. You can't pick up the phone and say, "Hey, we need you to come in and play tackle for us." And so I'm apprehensive about that. Just and it seems to me, my thought is that probably most every year among those 4 teams, you've got the best 2.
Yeah.
Seems like it.
Yeah. And now somebody, there may be an anomaly who's comes in there 7th or 8th, and all of a sudden gets hot and maybe gets a little bit lucky.
Yeah.
So I can see both sides of it. I can understand the coaches wanting more games, but I can also see the players' side of it. And we looked at a ton of data on that selection committee, and I think for the most part we got the 4 best teams, and it really now has sort of destroyed the idea of the conference playoff game.
Yeah.
Conference championship. I mean, that's just an extra game, but what does it mean?
Right.
Yeah, right. Because you at now you wouldn't even be playing in that Final Four game anyway.
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes,
yeah.
So no, I can understand that. For me, speaking about, Michael had, I guess it's a good segue to talk about this. First, I'll say that my father-in-law and my brother-in-law are huge Michigan fans. I mean, huge. Father-in-law is from the east side of Detroit. Mm-hmm. And so our house is, our family's divided when it comes to sports. Mm-hmm. Talking about that 97 national championship, and this is before the BCS was in place. Mm-hmm. We as Nebraska were declared national champions according to the coaches poll, and Michigan was according to the AP poll. My question is not about do you feel like you would beat Michigan. I was doing research on Coach Carr, and he said that to this day it bothers him because he feels like they were the champions and he wished he could have played it out. Does that bother you to this day? Like it could be a potential asterisk, like to Michigan fans, that Nebraska weren't really the national champions or so?
Yeah, I remember getting a hold of the Big Ten commissioner, and I said, why in the world don't we play?
Oh, wow.
And to be honest with you, we'd rather played Washington State They go down there and play Peyton Manning, and they had a very talented football team. But and of course the answer came back, well, we're the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
In the Big Ten, the Rose Bowl was everything. And but I think if you look at what happened afterwards, the players, Ryan Leaf, and Peyton Manning. Peyton did pretty well.
Yeah. Kind of a Hall of Famer.
And that was we had a pretty decisive win.
Yep.
But I think the negative was we had to play down at Missouri, where a lot of the people in the press thought, well, we were lucky, and we were, But there aren't very many times you go through 12 games, 13 games, where you don't have at least one game where the ball bounced for you.
Yeah, right.
And sometimes it happens, tell people all the time, sometimes it happens in the first quarter.
Yeah.
We talk about so many things happen at the end, but every single play that happened, every big throw that Scott made, every big run that you guys had, that all added up to Matt Davison hustling on a last play to get to that ball. So, I mean, I know you said luck. I'm always like, well, he was hustling. He was trying to get to the ball, which is something you teach, right? And that's something you encourage.
Yeah. Well, Scott actually hit Shevin Wiggins right in the numbers, but Shevin got hit. Ball came loose, and Shevin kicks it, and Matt came in there.
Yeah.
And that was at the end of the game. And but anyway, I can understand. But that's why I really like the playoff system, because you don't have some deal where a conference tie-up keeps the two top teams from playing. It just doesn't make any sense.
Let me ask you about USC and UCLA coming to the Big Ten. So now the Big Ten goes from Rutgers in New Jersey all the way to Los Angeles. What do you think about that size conference? What do you think about the travel? You were talking about student athletes now and the amount of travel it'll be. What do you think about that?
Well, I was surprised that those two teams joined the Big Ten. I just didn't see it coming. And right now, TV runs things so drastically.
Right.
So I'm sure they're looking at, well, if you're playing back at Rutgers, you're Eastern time, and you start a game at 12 there. Then you have a 2:30 kickoff in Midwest, and then you have a Mountain Time or a Pacific Coast time, and so you're going to have most of the windows filled.
Yeah.
And of course, that TV contract is going to be probably right at $100 million a year. So there aren't any teams in the Big Ten that don't have good facilities.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, they may be drawing 50,000 fans, but they still have really good facilities. And so in a way, it's a good thing, but in a way, it worries me that TV is driving so much of the whole agenda right now.
Yeah, it seems like it.
Yeah, and a big part of that TV now is there's a lot of gambling dollars across the country going into that. Nebraska now will have casino gambling, eventually going to have sports betting. I know you were a part of Gambling with the Good Life and opposing that. What's your feel now that it looks like we're going to be moving towards having both sports betting and the racinos in the state?
Well, I was somewhat aware of the fact that there was a fair amount of pressure in coaching, and I can remember having some kind of negative phone calls, not because we didn't win.
Oh,
because we didn't beat the point spread. We thought we did enough, and so as you know, there's now all these betting possibilities. How many first downs?
Props,
Who will play the most a quarterback, and pretty soon it's not really somebody observing a game for the game itself.
Right.
They're watching the game for all the money-making possibilities, and people inevitably get disappointed because the house is going to take the majority of the money.
For sure.
And it's a no-win deal in the long run.
You worry about the pressure it puts on the young men as well in the game?
Yeah. Not just it's the players, and coaches Of course, players now are paid too, but the coaches are paid to take it, but I think it's a little unfair to the players.
Yeah, thinking about, especially about the players getting paid, the 90s national title run, NIL, the NIL deal would have been crazy for the teams that you were coaching. What's your take on, do you feel like it's been time and the players are well deserved for an NIL deal? Like for myself, I'm from the inner city community. For me, I mean, I have both parents at home. We grew up, if you want to say, so to speak, struggling. I mean, you get players like Lawrence Phillips, Tommy Frazier. The list goes on. Amon Green. You get all these guys, especially just thinking about the ones from the inner city. Do you think that NIL is a good thing for the players today and could have been great for the players back then?
Well, again, I don't know. There's a clear-cut answer to it.
Yeah.
You really have two things working here. One is the transfer portal.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So as a people say it's like professional football now or professional athletics.
Yeah.
Well, it really isn't, because in NFL you have a contract, so you know that 90% of your players are going to be back next year unless they're a free agent. But in college, you could theoretically lose your whole team.
Yeah.
Or at least you could lose every good player on your team.
Yeah.
And the people I really hurt for are the North Dakotas.
Yeah.
And the schools that are probably not right at the very top, but they have good players.
Right.
And so they're getting rated, and that's tough for them. And the thing that could happen is you could say, okay, you can transfer any place you want, but you're not eligible right away.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way it used to be. You had to sit out
a
year.
Yeah, right.
And that would throw – but the thing that really concerns me is that there's going to be pressure to try to buy a team. There's one team that was highly rated. Their recruiting class was highly rated. Supposedly spent over $20 million.
Wow.
On their freshman class.
I hope they win it all.
So,
that's the investment.
But the interesting thing was that they didn't have that great a year. And,
that's A&M.
Yeah, and so the pressure, the pressure grows. Well, gee, we spent all this money.
Yeah.
And now maybe 2 or 3 years down the road. But the interesting thing about recruiting is you have all these ratings on recruiting classes, but you really don't know how good a class you had for about 2 years.
Right.
Okay.
Because, I mean, you go, maybe you only have half of those guys that you recruited.
Yeah.
That are rated so high are still there. You didn't have a good recruiting year.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So let me ask you about the Super Bowl's on Sunday. Kansas City's kind of at least the eastern part of the state's team, but there are 3 former Huskers on the Eagles. You pulling either way for either team?
No, I just hope it's a good game.
Yeah. I'm with you on that.
Both those quarterbacks, I'm just picturing them in your offense, either version of your offense, going back to when you were an offensive coordinator all the way through 97. Both of them been pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, Hurts is now Mahomes can move around.
Yeah.
Yeah. He can buy time. Hurts is probably just a guy that can go get you first down. A little stronger runner, and I think he's got a pretty good cast around him.
Oh yeah.
But certainly Kansas City does too. Should be a really interesting game. And it'll probably come down to who plays the best defense, who can slow the other team down the most, and maybe the kicking game,
Yeah.
Be a factor.
No doubt about that. Coach, we appreciate it as always.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking the time and sitting in with us.
And it's good to talk to you.
Good talking to you as well. As always, Josh, you're the one that's going to wrap it up. We do have another show coming up next Thursday. We'll have 2 good guests on. Both of them you know very well, Josiah and also, help me out,
Josh Dotzler.
Josh Dotzler, that's right, as well. So you go ahead and take us away, sir.
All right. Well, Coach, first of all, we thank you for being on 100%. It's great to finally talk with you for a while.
Yep.
My name is Josh Jones on behalf of my man, Michael Severe. You know how we do it. It's the Later Fly Show.
a Huda Media Production.